joining me from the Ringer back here on the Rich Eisen Show. So much to talk about with Howard Beck. Good to see you, Howard. How are you, sir?
Great to see you too, Rich. Doing well. Hope you're doing well as well. And before I forget, please say hello to Susie for me.
You know how you just know how to come correct, Howard. She would say, "Did Howard say hello?" So I'm glad we can check that box. Good to see you. So I mean, what a bummer. This is the only way to put it about Jayson Tatum. The guy was having one of the greatest basketball nights one can have in Madison Square Garden for a defending NBA champ. Just a superb evening, and then we saw what happened. Best you can tell, is this an Achilles injury, Howard?
I mean, that's obviously the first thing going through all of our heads as you're watching this. If you've watched basketball for any length of time, and if you've ever seen a guy go down with a non-contact injury and immediately holding that part of their leg, and then the emotion that overcame him immediately, you could just see, like, he knew whatever it is. Jayson Tatum is pretty sure it's a terrible, devastating injury, because the emotions, as well as his pain, telegraph that immediately. So you hope against hope. You hope that it's not an Achilles, and you hope that Jayson Tatum will be back on a court before too long, although it doesn't seem likely until at least next season at the earliest. So that's all just awful. It's terrible for the Celtics, clearly, and for their title defense. And it's devastating more than anything for Jayson Tatum personally and for his career. And yeah, I mean, Rich, you said it, like, the guy was having an incredible night. I mean, we all talk about this. We rhapsodize about Madison Square Garden, and like, there's just no better place to have a career defining game or just a spectacular night, period. And in the playoffs, and with your team down and you're trying to rally them. And, you know, the story was being written, you know, like the script was being written for this phenomenal comeback where Tatum can tie up the series, and Celtics can tie up the series, get back in this thing, maybe beat the Knicks in the series, and go try to defend their championship. And right now that's looking rather bleak.
Well, in terms of the long-term future, assuming this is something so significant, Howard, what are the Celtics looking at in this offseason? There was already word that, you know, with second aprons and things like that, that there were some big names that were going to get moved off this team anyway. What does this mean, do you think, for the Celtics?
So my friend Bobby Marks over at ESPN, obviously the guru of all things salary cap and second aprons, first aprons, other various kitchen attire. Bobby has noted for some time here that they were looking at probably like a $500 million payroll and tax combination for next season. And of course, this is happening while they're also going through an ownership change. And while Wick Grossbeck's group has always been willing to spend whatever it took in luxury taxes to keep this thing going, it's not clear whether the new ownership group, which has not yet been approved officially, will do the same. So there's that piece of it. If you win a championship, if you go back to back, you know, the pressure's on you as ownership to keep everything together no matter what it costs you. But in today's NBA, it's also not just about whether you're willing to keep writing checks for tens of millions or hundreds of millions of extra dollars. It's also about these aprons, and these aprons take away your ability to continue to build your roster or to replace players if they're lost to injury, for instance. And it makes it very, very difficult to sustain your roster. So the Celtics, with or without Tatum being injured, and with or without a championship in June, we're already going to be in a really difficult position. And I think that this complicates it that much further.
Howard Beck of the Ringer here on the Rich Eisen Show. So let's talk about a trade that worked for both teams, it appears, as the Timberwolves and the Knicks are up 3-1, both of them on the cusp of their conference championship game series appearances. Let's take the Knicks first, and what you're seeing from this team, different, obviously, from the past few years, Howard.
You know, Rich, what's really fascinating about the Knicks right now in this moment is that they are kind of recapturing the spirit of what made last year's Knicks team with Julius Randle and Dante DiVincenzo instead of Karl-Anthony Towns so beloved and so admired. The Knicks last season were just incredibly scrappy, tough, resilient, all those things, every adjective in that category. And we saw it in the playoffs last year. They kept losing bodies and they just kept winning, and they finally just ran out of bodies and ran out of gas, and they lost to the Pacers in a Game 7 at Madison Square Garden. And from the moment they made that trade to get Karl-Anthony Towns, and you understood why, they'd lost Hartenstein to free agency. They couldn't keep him. They tried, and they needed a center. Mitch Robinson was hurt, and you knew you were going to miss him for at least half the season. And Towns was available. And we'll talk about that in a second, but Towns was available, and Towns is a very different fit than the Hartenstein-Mitch Robinson combination. I think there were moments this season, Rich, and of course they also picked up Mikal Bridges last offseason. There were moments this season where Knicks fans felt very conflicted about this team. They were still winning at a decent pace, but they weren't quite as dominant as they'd hoped. Bridges didn't look like as fluid of a fit as Knicks fans and the Knicks themselves had hoped. Towns, as we know throughout his career, incredibly skilled offensive player, not a rim protector, not always the grittiest player. And it seemed like the Knicks had lost a little bit of what had made them special, especially last spring. And somewhere along the way here, Rich, they've got that back, and that includes Towns. Now, he hasn't had, a dominant game every time out in these first two rounds, but he's come up with some key blocks and key stops at times and key rebounds at times. Bridges is looking much better now than he was, a few months back. It all seems to be falling into place, and they are once again embodying the spirit of their toughest nails point guard Jalen Brunson and their toughest nails head coach Tom Thibodeau. And I don't think Knicks fans are having any of that ambivalence that I was describing from a couple months ago.
No. And then on the flip side, Julius Randle with a triple-double in Game 3's victory for the Timberwolves in San Francisco. And then, Anthony Edwards doing his usual walking the walk, talking the talk situation in Game 4. And they're on the verge of going to the Western Conference Finals, Howard, again. Here we go. The Timberwolves have got that look about themselves, and I'll give you the floor on that. And what a bummer that Steph Curry got hurt in this series.
Yeah, we need to ban injuries.
Yes, I agree.
Anthony Edwards has been fantastic. There are moments where you think, is he getting it? Is he going to get it? And then suddenly it's like, oh my gosh, yes, there it is again. Steph being out certainly puts a damper on the just the overall picture of this series. Certainly a bummer for Warriors fans who thought maybe, Jimmy Butler was going to get them over the top again. It's been fascinating watching Randle and to a lesser extent DiVincenzo fit in there. I alluded to this a minute ago. This was a financial decision. We talked about the second apron and all the features of this new CBA. If not for the second apron and all of that stuff, I don't know that they were trading Towns. This was not a basketball-motivated decision last summer as much as it was a financial and a bookkeeping decision. And you wondered at the moment that they made it. They gave up the best player in the deal in Towns, but they got two really valuable rotation pieces. Randall's had a really up and down last couple of years in the postseason when he was in New York. Knicks fans had very mixed feelings about Julius Randle, a little bit of a love-hate thing with him. And part of that was he couldn't stay healthy in the playoffs. But there's also been moments where he'd faded at key moments. Randall's been fantastic. DiVincenzo has done for Minnesota a lot of what he did for New York. And it's worked out really well. Again, I don't think that they would have done this in a vacuum if it was just about the basketball, but it has really benefited the Timberwolves. And yeah, I don't know if we would have said this a couple months ago, but as of right now in mid-May, with these teams both on the verge of making the conference finals in their respective conferences, it is going to be the classic case of a trade that truly helped both teams. And, nice to see that occasionally.
No doubt. Howard Beck here on the Rich Eisen Show. Okay, Howard, if I had tinfoil, I'd make a hat out of it for this next question. The number of people who thought the NBA put their thumb on the draft lottery scale for the Dallas Mavericks to get Cooper Flagg with their 1% chance, just under the 2% milk, right? That they go 1.8% to Cooper Flagg. I've lost track on the number of people who say, well, the NBA watched Nico Harrison fumble the bag, and at least they had him set up the Lakers for post-LeBron. Now let's do him a favor and send Cooper Flagg there. I've lost track on the number of people who say that. And you, sir, are an inveterate NBA man. He's covered this league and association forever and a day. I'll give you the floor on this subject matter. Howard?
Rich, if we were texting right now, I would wear out my finger on the eye roll emoji. It would just go over and over and over and over again for pages and pages, and you would finally be like, Howard, please stop. Enough. I get it. My eyes are going to roll so far, they're going to go into the back of my head. Listen, I get it. I get it. But no, this is not a conspiracy. The lottery is not rigged. I'm not in Chicago. I'm home in Brooklyn, but I've been in that room before, the lottery room, the actual drawing room where the ping pong ball machine is. And the folks from Ernst & Young, the worldwide, very respected firm of Ernst & Young, presides over this whole thing. There are, I don't know, a couple dozen people in the room. You've got the representatives of every team that's in the lottery. You've got a bunch of us from the media who are there as the neutral observers. You've got other various NBA officials and people from NBA security. You can watch this whole thing unfold, and they now put it online. I think it's on YouTube or maybe on the NBA's website, where you can go and look, and you can see this for yourself, how this goes. It is a complex process. It is a detailed process. There are all kinds of safeguards built into the process. And when I've heard people say, well, if you were in the room and you knew something happened and, nobody would be able to say anything because the media would lose their credentials or whatever. For this to be a conspiracy that we could all witness in the room and then all keep silent, that would require, among other things, among the many, many holes in this whole stupid conspiracy theory, that would require the complicity of all the teams that lost the lottery. Why would they do that? Why would the other 13 teams that were in the lottery be like, yeah, it's okay. Let the Mavericks have it. They made a stupid trade. Let's give them the best pick in the draft. Why would they be complicit in that? Now, if you want to say it's somehow rigged because the lottery balls, the ping pong balls are somehow weighted or this or that, there's some way of fixing the whole draw. Okay, fine. You have accused a massive number of people of I don't even know how many felonies and fraudulence perpetrated on the public, not to mention perpetrated on members of their own organization, perpetrated on other NBA franchises. It doesn't make any sense. I don't think it's possible. I don't think it happens. I hate that I've had to even expend this much time saying why it was not the case.
Howard, I hear you. Because, I hear all the time how the NFL is fixed, it's rigged, and my answer is like that means the other franchises in the league are complicit to say, sure, let's make sure the Chiefs continue to win because the league loves Taylor Swift going to these games because it brings in a whole new fan base and a lot more revenue. It's absurd. I just wanted to give that moment to you to explain, how it all works. That said, there is something off about this draft lottery where the three teams with the three worst records have the same chance of getting the first overall pick and then winding up, since they've changed this way of doing things because teams and franchises in the association could not be trusted to not tank en masse in the final throes of the regular season, that there's something off here, that a team like the Wizards picks sixth and a team like the Jazz picks fifth and the Hornets fourth. I mean, the teams with the worst records in the NBA aren't even choosing in the top three. I mean, something's got to go. Something's got to be done about at least the way they go about the setup, Howard, don't you think? Or no?
Rich, 10 years ago, we were having, not necessarily literally you and me having, but we, right, the collective, right, we were having this discussion in the opposite direction, which is teams are tanking too much. The process era Sixers did their thing, and we've got to do something about teams being able to manipulate the system and get a top three pick. And the NBA responded by reforming, quote unquote, reforming the lottery. And in doing so, gave the teams with the three worst records an equal weight or equal chance of getting number one, different chances of getting 2 and 3. And so this has worked. What the NBA did to reform the lottery several years ago has worked. The whole point was to dissuade teams from doing what the Jazz and the Wizards did this season and what some other teams did as well. But those were the two most egregious. The whole point was to say, don't try losing intentionally just because you're going to try to game the system. You can't game the system anymore. You'll have a better shot than most teams at the number one pick, but not 25% anymore if you had the worst record. Now it's only 14%. And that's supposed to dissuade teams. And the lottery results in the last several years since reform have shown over and over that being a bottom three team does not guarantee you a top three pick. And a lot of teams have tried this gambit anyway and lost in the same way that the Wizards and Jazz lost out last night. That's the system working. It's not the system being broken. That's the system conveying that you cannot manipulate this thing. And if you try, all right, you know what? You might get the number 1 pick, San Antonio, or you might finish 5th or 6th, Washington and Utah. So this is the system working. And I don't know. I get that people now, especially if you're a fan of the teams that really thought they were going to be at the top of the board, are suddenly wringing their hands going, well, now what do we do? I get that frustration, but we have to decide what we actually want out of this. Do we want a system that rewards intentional losing, or do you want a system that has enough volatility where you can't manipulate it?
Well, I mean, the crazy thing is now people in Miami are saying they should have not made the play-in tournament because had they not played out of that tournament, to just get wiped off the face of the earth in the first round, they would have had the slot the Mavericks had.
Yeah.
And assuming the ping pong balls bounced in the same way, Cooper Flagg would be going to South Florida right now. And that's what they're talking about in Miami, Howard. You know, so now now we might get to the point of like, what's the point of making the play-in tournament to play out of it only to get smoked in the first round? You know, like that's part of the conversation today.
Yeah, and it's part of the reason why the NBA has been very careful in the way that they've devised the lottery odds and the system. So when they were discussing this, 10 years ago, one of the things, people go back to like, well, why don't we just go back to the way the lottery was at the very beginning, where every non-playoff team has equal odds of winning it all. But then the problem is exactly what you're just describing, Rich, where if you're on the fence about making the playoffs or the play-in, versus just, letting go of the rope and being a lottery team, even as the 13th or 14th team in the lottery, if it's equally weighted throughout, you might as well say, I'm better off in the lottery. Why do I want to go be cannon fodder as an 8th seed? I'll just opt out of the playoffs and I'll have just as good of a chance of winning the lottery as the 14th team as the 1 team. So that's why they haven't gone back to that. And that's why I don't think they ever would go back to that. But what's interesting is, as you point out, Miami can sit there now looking at exactly what unfolded and knowing where they would have been if they had just lost in the play-in and not made the playoffs. It's just like there's always going to be a cutoff point. There's always going to be some team that had to make a decision. And at least in this case, in real time, Miami could not have known that the team with one of the lowest chances of getting the number 1 pick was going to get it, right? So there's still no incentive to decide to be a lottery team instead of a playoff team if you're on the borderline in, early April. So again, I think this is the system working. It just, sucks if you're the Miami Heat or Miami Heat fan. I mean, it's the basketball gods can be cruel, although not so much in Dallas right now.
My favorite, Howard Beck here, a couple minutes left with the senior NBA writer for The Ringer, Howard Beck here on the Rich Eisen Show. My favorite meme coming off of the draft lottery of the Mavericks winning the first overall pick was a quick GIF from the Equalizer where Denzel Washington has a gun pointed right at him, right? And it says, this is Nico Harrison today. Denzel Washington has a gun pointed right at him. He steals it right out of the guy's hands and points it back at the guy who had the gun. That it's now flipped. Nico's now, look out now. Nico has completely flipped the script thanks to the basketball ping pong gods, right?
Yeah.
He's not going to trade this pick, right, Howard? I mean, there are some people in Dallas who think this could be another. I mean, he's not going to. You want him to.
I mean, Giannis
Brockman
is right there.
Wants him to.
Number 1 pick and a couple other dudes for Giannis. Like, what are we doing?
I mean, they have Anthony Davis. I don't know. I don't think they'll do that. I mean, but the Spurs have got the 2, right? They got the 2nd overall pick. I know they have Wembanyama. I mean, how does this all work together? With the Giannis looming over these proceedings now that he supposedly has the wanderlust from Milwaukee, Howard.
Yeah, I mean, what a wild change of fate for Nico Harrison. I mean, I don't think he's necessarily getting a parade thrown for him tomorrow. Like he didn't do anything to win the lottery. That's just luck, but it certainly gets him off the hook for what might have been, what probably was the most unpopular trade in the history of professional basketball on Earth or in the galaxy. It's great. Look, I'm happy for Mavericks fans for sure. They deserve this after the heartache and everything they've gone through. It does present like fairly, and it was funny because I texted a couple of people around the NBA last night from other front offices, and they were like, "Yeah, don't put anything past Nico about trading the pick." But I think there's actually, jokes aside, a case to at least consider it, right? They have said, and look, Kyrie's injury, the ACL injury, puts this in a little bit different light. But Nico's justification has been in part that we've got a window here. Kyrie's in his early 30s. Early to mid 30s, and Anthony Davis, who they've acquired, in that same time frame. So if the whole thing is we're trying to win in the next 3 to 5 years, how confident are you that Cooper Flagg, any rookie, frankly, can contribute to winning at a high level immediately? Because it doesn't happen very often in this league. I mean, Wembanyama is a generational talent, just an absolute incredible athlete, and Wembanyama has not turned around the Spurs in the first 2 years, injury aside. Rookies don't generally catapult a team to title contention. And so if you've got Anthony Davis and you've got Kyrie Irving coming back, who knows, maybe January or February of next season, and you say that the window is now, well, if the window is now, there's a case to at least be made. I'm not saying I'm making it. I'm just saying it's out there that if you traded Cooper Flagg for a high-level veteran who helps you right now, maybe Giannis Antetokounmpo, maybe somebody else, there's a case for it. Not saying they should do it, not saying they will. But there's a discussion, I think, to be had, and they would be foolish not to at least have that conversation internally and weigh the pros and cons.
Well, I mean, Dallas would check the Giannis box of no state income tax if that is, in fact, a rumored truth. And so what is, before I let you go, the status of Giannis's mind right now, Howard, that you know?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to add anything new to this discussion that we haven't all already either heard, perceived, or heard whispered. But Giannis was putting, kind of, I don't know how to frame this, but even he had a report or an interview with the New York Times, I think it was 2 summers ago already, where he had kind of hinted at the idea that listen, I want to win more championships. And he has said this in various forms in various places. I want to win more championships, and that's the priority. And if I can't do it here, we'll see. Well, the Bucks have clearly reached the end of the road here with this group, with this roster, with Damian Lillard as his running mate since Dame went down with the injury and is lost for the foreseeable future. And given his age anyway, I don't know how much longer they had to go together. Giannis has not, as of yet, demanded a trade, and I think we're in that weird kind of in-between zone where if you're the Milwaukee Bucks, you don't want to voluntarily trade a generational talent like Giannis. If you're Giannis, you don't want to have to look like the bad guy by saying it's time for me to go and make the trade demand. I suspect that what will eventually happen is the two, entities, the team and the player and his representation will come together and mutually decide that it's best for all parties if the Bucks chart a new direction and Giannis goes somewhere where he can contend. I think that's where this is all going. I'm not saying that. It's not a report. Please don't aggregate it. I just think that that's where this is inevitably heading. And I think we're in for a wild summer.
Too late. I think it's been aggregated by 3 other spots, man. Yep. That's what happens when you come on the Rich Eisen Show.
Those guys are fast.
Susie is going to be sitting in this chair a few times over the next couple weeks, Howard. So be on the lookout. Bolo for a Susie Schuster invite back here. You are one of her favorites, and the same goes for us. Thanks for the time, brother.
Always appreciate it, Rich. Great to see you, man.
Howard Beck, senior NBA writer for The Ringer here on The Rich Eisen Show. Catch The Rich Eisen Show live weekdays from 12 to 3 p.m. Eastern on Roku Sports Channel in the U.S.